Welcome, event yackers, to this week's show, where we talk with Kyle Bondo. Kyle has a pretty diverse past. He started out in the U.S. Navy as an intelligence technician, and after that, he worked as a web developer and was involved in interactive tech at a point when the web was just really beginning to take off. Fast forward a bit, and he's the co-founder of Gagglepod, a company that helps people develop and hone their podcasting skills. And this is how I ran into Kyle. He's got a couple of podcasts happening now, including the recently restarted Merchants of Dirt. And this, friends, is what piqued my interest. Merchants of Dirt speaks to off-road type racing promoters, the dirt bikers, the ruckers, the orienteers, a word I had never until now even heard of. Recent episodes of Merchants of Dirt relate specifically to our current COVID-induced situation. How can large groups of people gather together to race on a course today? Well, the answer is they can't. But Kyle, creative guy that he is, has some virtual ideas for off-road racers as well as for the rest of us in the not-so-rucking world of events. Ready, set, go.
Playback ending in 5.
Standby fake music, standby talent.
3, 2, 1. Clear.
Music go. Talent go. Welcome to Event Yak, where event pros share their stories about the past, present, and future. I'm your host, Terri Walters. I want to welcome Kyle Bondo to our show today. Thanks, Kyle, for being here today.
That's great to have me. Thanks a lot, Terri.
Yeah, great. Kyle and I met actually at a podcast conference like 2 years ago, Indie PodCon, which is formerly known as MapCon. Now, how long do you think you have to actually say formerly known as? What's the correct?
Probably 2 years. It's weird because MapCon rolls off the tongue and Indie PodCon, or I think he calls it Icon now.
Icon.
It's foreign because it's always been MapCon. So now you have to relearn an acronym that your mouth doesn't want to say.
It's true. It's like the artist formerly known as Prince. Like, how long did we say that? And then he became Prince again. So he was like the artist formerly known as the artist known as Prince. So I don't know.
Right. 2 years. He gets 2 years, and then I can say whatever I want. Yeah.
Yeah. We were on a team, and we had to create a podcast on the fly. It was like a creative building, team building thing. And our idea was the beer tent, which
Beer tent consultants.
Yes, the beer tent consultants. We had a talking horse. I don't know where that came from, but
that was the guy from New York. He was the talking horse.
Yeah, he had a British accent.
It got really weird.
It did. We didn't win, but we should have.
We should have. Yes.
But thanks again for being on the show.
Absolutely.
What I want to do is give folks a little bit of background on you and then get right into the types of events that you do, which are outdoor endurance races. But you were, we'll open up the album. You were in the Navy early on for like a decade at least, right?
I was.
What did you do there?
Oh, wow. So that might be the first time anyone's ever really asked me. I was in military intelligence.
Thank you for your service, by the way, too. I don't want to forget to say that. Thank you for protecting us.
Imagine if you would, if you were a historian, only an historian that blows things up. That's kind of what military intelligence is a lot of like. You do a lot of reading, and because you read so much, you know exactly where to hit somebody, where it'll hurt them the worst. That's kind of like in a ballpark what the job really entails. But
perfect.
It was a lot of reading. I mean, like a lot of reading, and then a lot of writing, which makes you really good at the craft of reading and writing. But it was long moments of boredom followed by sheer moments of terror. So,
all right. Well, that sounds like a good start. then you, after you came out of the Navy, you became like a web developer at the time when the web was really starting to take off. So was that like really scary, or was that like really interesting?
I started life early on as I got a degree right out of high school in electrical and mechanical engineering, and I was a computer assisted drafter for a long period of time. To a kid, long period of time, a couple of years.
Mhm.
And I got an assistant engineering job at the K2 ski factory in Vashon Island, Washington, like 1,000 years ago. And I was bored. We were breaking skis. We were doing direct pressure molding. It was boring. I realized that I didn't want to be an engineer ever. And that's when my friend said, "Hey, I left my backpack at the Navy recruiters. Let's go get it." And then they showed me a couple different recruiting videos. And I was like, "Oh, this is what I want to do." So fast forward to coming out of the Navy, I kind of found the love for engineering again and realized I just picked the wrong engineering. I realized that software engineering was what I really wanted to do. So I got deep into website design and web creation, servers, and those kind of things. And I found that in every engineering group I was in, that no one knew how to design anything. They didn't actually go like, "Hey, let's ask the customer what they want. What is the customer? Let's put this in front of the customer so they can actually use it." So I started asking those questions, and I became very quickly known as the weird guy who asked customers. Kyle talks to customers, put him in front of them, because the engineers didn't. They're terrified of customers, and I got kind of in this role called user interface design and user experience design, and that kind of where that all took off from was trying to retool my engineering skills to something useful. That's where that kind of came from.
All right. So it doesn't sound too scary. It sounds, more, client focused, client facing, that kind of thing. But cool. So that's kind of, your day job kind of stuff. But you're kind of Captain IT by day, but by night you're assume your other identity, which is, like the pod monster. Is very, Incredible Hulkish kind of. So you, I'm reaching because I know absolutely nothing about comics. Can you tell?
No capes.
So you're the founder of Gagglepod. Tell me a little bit about Gagglepod.
So Gagglepod is kind of an extension of that same design idea, which was we wanted to teach people how to do this art form. And in a way, podcasting is an art form. It's a technology, it's a medium, it's also an art form. It's kind of a culmination of the three. And there's a lot of tacit knowledge that belongs in this place because you have to be a presenter. You have to understand how all this equipment works. You have to understand audio engineering, and you have to be entertaining on top of everything else. And there's marketing and all that. I mean, it just seems like the disciplines go on and on and on. So Gagglepod became this, that kind of started that way. And really, we've kind of niched down to everything before the microphone. We realized that concept creation is where people struggle the most. It's just coming up with an idea that they actually will push them to, so many episodes or to create a show that actually people want to listen to. And that's where that started. It started way back in its infancy. And now it's kind of starting to pick up a little steam. So we're getting a little more traction, I think, just because my co-founder and I, Tim Bryan, have really realized that we can't teach you everything. So where can we really focus to make the most bang for our buck? And that's where we kind of decided was that concept creation piece. Everything before the microphone has really almost become our impromptu tagline.
So when you say everything, just to be clear, when you say everything before the microphone, it's, hey, how do you set this stuff up? What is it? Does it include the gear, or is it more really just focused on the concept itself, like getting people to niche down themselves?
More of the latter. It kind of gets into the concept, the actual nuts and bolts of the idea, how to create your why, which has a lot to do with your direction, your bias, who's your target audience, those kind of pieces. It has a lot to do with content creation of, okay, if you've niched down this far, what are your topics? What do you talk about? What's the thing that makes you unique in those topics? Mm-hmm. It has to do a lot with understanding your space. Who else is talking about these things, and how can you differentiate yourself between you don't want to sound like a copy of a copy. You want to sound, like yourself. That's where a majority of that sits in that piece. Because frankly, people struggle with first, what the heck do I podcast about? When they finally figure that out, then they say, well, what makes me different? And once they finally figure that out, they say, how do I develop content that'll make my show interesting? Those are the three kind of spheres that are difficult for people to get. The technology, I can show you a diagram. We can set it up in an afternoon. I can show you the 5 minutes of how things work, and you're going to know most of it very quickly. That stuff can be taught. The idea creation, the ideation stuff, and the actual content creation, that stuff's hard because it's softer skills. It's that creative side. It's that right brain, left brain combo where people struggle with because they're like, oh, I think I'll sound stupid, or, oh, no one will listen to that, or, oh, that's not a very good topic. And then you start to realize that when you nail down your target audience, those are the people that think that what you're talking about is the greatest thing ever. And when you realize that that's the greatest thing ever, you go, oh, well then if they think that's great, wow, they're really going to like these other 15 things. And that's kind of how that happens. It's in a way, there's some, what do you call it? I want to say consulting. It's more like therapy. It's like getting people very comfortable with the idea of, he's like, yeah, we get it. You think you sound bad now. It's okay. Everyone does at the beginning. Okay, yeah, you won't think those contents or those episodes are going to be that great. It's okay. Everyone thinks that way. But you're going to find one person who's going to find your show at episode 50 and go, I love Terri so much. I'm going to listen to episodes 1 through 49 before I ever listen to episode 50 and find out everything that she ever did. And you're going to go, no, that can't happen. And he goes, yeah, it happens every single day. Those people find you. It's tribe building. And that's really what that comes down to, is if you can niche down good enough and that idea, people will go back and find your whole catalog, and you'll find in your stats one day, you'll get like this massive download. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm so popular. And no, it's one person fell in love with you, became a fan for life, and they downloaded your entire catalog and listened to all of it. And you're going to meet that person one day. They're going to walk up to you and go, oh my gosh, are you Terri? Oh, I listen to your show all the time. Oh my gosh, you're so awesome. I can't believe I'm talking to you. It will happen. It doesn't seem like it now because you're early. That's fine. But someday someone's going to walk up to you and say that. And I know this because it's happened to me and it's happened to people I know. And I did this to Dave Jackson from School of Podcasting. My first time I saw him, I was like, oh my God, it's Dave. Oh, so big. And now it's Dave and Kyle. So.
Well, now I'm going to have to pay you for my hour of therapy because all the stuff you're talking about is exactly, what I'm going through. It's
$100. That's all. So we say that all the time. $100.
All right. Sounds pretty reasonable to me. All right. So you're the Gagglepod is kind of your, top of your media empire. Within that, you've got a couple of shows called Podwrecked. You've got Not Easily Squished. They relate mostly to podcasting and helping people. Yes. Kind of do that. You also have Tim has Create Art podcast, which is a different kind of a genre. I listen to that as well. And you have a dramatic podcast. So you have a bunch of different things going on.
Well, we have to eat our own dog food. So in order to teach people how to do these kind of things, we kind of have to go do it ourselves. So a lot of these were, we're talking about podcasting. Why don't we do a podcast about it? If we're talking about design, we better know what we're talking about. And with the Positive Dramatic Effect, which was an experiment, was like, hey, we want to talk to people about how to create audio drama and do multi-host recordings, which is really what audio drama is. It's like a lot of people doing all recording and then all the editing in there. We better know what we're talking about. So we are really big in experiments, and not all of them work, but some of them do.
You have to be in it to win it, they say,
A little bit like that.
So a couple of the other podcasts that, and actually you just restarted the One Up, and I listened to, I think, the last 3 that you just did. You just did some Merchants of Dirt. You started that back up again in response to what's happening with COVID-19. Yep. Tell me a little bit. I kind of get. You've got Merchants of Dirt. You've got the Reckoneer. You've got break down kind of what you have going on as far as the media pieces.
Sure. So when I first started down this podcasting road, I was a blogger. And I wrote a blog called Reckoneer, or Reckoneer.com. And it was I had spent the past 20 years doing as a side hustle endurance sports and endurance races. This includes trail running, mountain biking, adventure racing, orienteering, kayaking, canoeing, bushwhacking, fast packing, peak bagging.
Some of these things are made up, right? Is that no?
Peak bagging is how many peaks can you hit in a certain time period. That's
All right.
format. There is fast packing is how fast can you go from the parking lot to the peak and back. Orienteering is finding flags that people have hidden in the woods based on a map and a compass. And adventure racing is doing all that with a map and a compass within a certain period of time, but you can only get to this flag running and only that flag on your mountain bike and this other flag with your kayak. So this is the world of endurance sports. This is off-road racing. That's what Reckoneer was. I had learned how to put these all together, all these different kind of events, all the little tiny nuances that took place in race promotion and race direction. And I was hungry for people who had been training or teaching this, only to find out no one was doing it. No one was teaching it. So I wrote a blog. I wrote a blog for years about how to do this because I'd put all these pieces together. I started writing the blog. And then I realized that no one was reading the blog. So I said, okay, well, what's another way to put this out? I thought about video, and I eventually came to podcasting as a way to almost use my blog posts as my scripts. And I did 50 episodes of the Merchants of Dirt podcast on everything from pricing your races to course direction to venue creation to marketing and basically all the business skills that race promoters are really bad at, which is, if you ever met a race promoter, they're paper and clipboard people. They do everything they almost recreate the wheel every single time they create a race. It's very inefficient. They don't do optimizing well. They might plan a little bit better, but a lot of them are just scraping by to make a buck on this business.
And there's no app for that currently at this point.
Yeah, there's a ton of little tiny apps for the race itself, but not for the creation of the race. That's the problem, is the creation of the race. So like active.com kind of went down this road a little bit, but then they that's really if you want to do a 5K. These are the kind of people that are not doing 5Ks. They're doing trail runs, 5-10 miles. They're doing mountain bike races. They're doing USA cycling level races where you actually have sanctioned events. This is the entire world of UCI mountain biking sports all in there. There is somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think, $60 billion wrapped up in outdoor recreation and outdoor sports. No one knows that. And it was like, well, 60 billion. Why is Bob, the mountain bike racer, making barely $1,000 in profit after all years worth of racing? And yet there's $60 billion? Well, because he's doing it wrong. And this is what I decided I was going to change. I was going to create a way in which to create off-road sports that actually you can make money with. And so that's what I did. Merchants of Dirt became that podcast. And I thought at the beginning, no one was listening. Just like the blog, no one was reading it. And then all of a sudden, like around episodes 30 or so, this guy named Sam from Oklahoma sends me an email going, "Oh my God, I have found your podcast and your website. I have read everything. I am creating a race to help save my summer camp. We're about to go broke. We need an event. None of the fundraising is working. We're going to do a race. And I read all your stuff, and I'm going to do it based on everything I learned." I was like, no one's going to do that. Sure enough, Sam went and did a trail run, saved his summer camp. I was like, oh my gosh, it actually worked. It didn't just work for me. It worked for someone else. And that was proof in the pudding, and I guess you could say. So.
Wow. So, I mean, were you or are you a race promoter yourself? Is that something that you did? And like, how did you get into that?
So I volunteered. Well, we go back way even further. So let me let you in a little secret that the reason I joined the Navy was to be a Navy SEAL. And I know that sounds almost cliche at this point, but I joined the Navy. I was sent through a dive-farer company. They sent me to Coronado. I was in a couple different classes, and I tore my quadricep in 2 places. And that pretty much ended my dream of being a team guy. So I couldn't be a SEAL. I became a guy that supported SEALs, which is like, it's like being the water boy on the football team. If your football team is the Notre Dame, if Notre Dame is your football team, yeah, you might be the water boy, but you're the water boy for the Notre Dame, right? So I've had this love for endurance and pushing yourself from the very beginning. So I started doing that out of the Navy to maintain my physical fitness. Started doing more and more extreme stuff. It just got more crazy. The distances got further, the hours got further. And then I was introduced to a sport called adventure racing, which is this combination multidiscipline stuff, which you have 12 hours to find all these places and then get back to the start, and then you get ranked. And you have to do it as a team, which is very like right in my wheelhouse to have this team element. But they only put on maybe 5 or 6 of them on the East Coast a year. I was like, well, dang, we need to start doing that. So it started with trying to help out with that. I was volunteering. And then I got really, really involved in mountain bike racing specifically, and then in orienteering as well. And the more I helped out, I found out that the secrets that all these race directors supposedly had weren't secrets at all. They were pretty much the same business skills that everyone else had, only they pretend like they had the secret sauce. Like, oh, my race is very different. Oh, I own this park. And I turned out they don't own parks. They don't own the courses. All their secrets were a lot of times made up on the fly. They couldn't recreate the same thing over and over again. They had no plan and no way of recreating the same one race that was successful. They couldn't recreate it. Everything was a guess. Everything was last minute. And a lot of them were micromanagement, tyrannical type people in the first place. It was like, well, how do you birth this? I want to do this myself. I'm tired of these people. I'm tired of being run by these people who don't want to share anything about their sport. And that's when I said, I'm going to do my own. Forget you all. I'm going to do my own. And I started with mountain bike racing. And for mountain bike racing, I joined a cycling club that did a 4 event, a summer race called Wednesdays at Wakefield. It was a series of 4 different mountain bike races. It was done every Wednesday for 4 weeks in a row. And then you had a series champion at the end. And I did that for almost 8 years. And that was with the club. So the club had all the gear. They had the trailer. They had a lot of stuff. So I didn't have to do any of the capital investment at the very beginning. But I had everything else was under my control. From there, I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to do something else. It just so happens that I was also pursuing a degree in another degree at the time, using my GI Bill. And I realized that my college, I was going to George Mason University, didn't have a cycling team, didn't have a cycling program. It's a basketball school with no cycling. In fact, I was told by the crew coach when I first started a cycling club at my university that cycling wasn't a sport. So
Nice.
I think it's hilarious. I started a cycling club there. I belonged to a club. I started another club, and we started doing races within the club, and the two kind of connected together. And so as the cycling, I became the coach when I graduated. As the cycling coach for a collegiate mountain biking team and someone who understood race direction, we started our own series. And that was the birth of Reckoneer. We started our own company, started doing our own races. We ran for 4 years of doing our own races. And after doing 8 years of one and all the other stuff and doing 4 years of another, I got burnt out. I realized that I had other things I wanted to do, and I didn't want to do this at this point in my life. So I shelved it. I put it off to the side. I said, you know what? I'm going to do this a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit later. And I stopped doing Merge the Dirt podcast. I stopped doing the blog. I stopped doing races. I took a year off. And instead of being a race director, I started to go to races. I started to enjoy racing again. And then I realized that, yep, still in the blood. Outdoor events. And you start to realize, as when you've done all this, when you go to other events and you see how other race promoters and how other race directors do their events, you start to see things that you didn't notice before, which was, why did he do this way? Because if he'd done it the other way, he would have saved himself $1,000. Why did he decide to put this as their venue? Because if he'd done it at this other place, he could have had twice as many people there. And you start to see all the mistakes that people make in these little places. You start to become critical of their events and realizing that it's like, if I told people about this, then maybe they don't make the same mistakes. And that kind of became maybe there is more Merchants of Dirt in me. Maybe there is other things. And then this happened. The big
COVID thing.
Big COVID thing. Everyone stay inside. And I saw all my friends who are running race companies have what's basically an extinction level event. A lot of them don't know it yet. And this is the unfortunate thing. A lot of them don't realize that the way racing is going to be done in the future will not be the way they were doing it before. They're all pretending like this will blow over by the summer. It's not. And the sooner they figure that out, the better. And a couple of them have. They started virtual events. All the proceeds for those events go to charity. It's like an experiment. That's great. Experiments are great. But a lot of them haven't. A lot of them have realized they're just trying to, we'll buckle down. We'll wait till it blows over and we'll come out on the other side. And this is, I think I'm going to probably say 50% of these race companies will go out of business by August. There won't be.
Wow.
A lot of them have even calendar dates saying that by June, there's a race coming out in June. We're going to do, hey, sign up now for the 2021 races. Yeah. All that is just an attempt to plus up their bank accounts to survive the coming year. It's not going to work.
So you have come up with an idea or a series of ideas to actually help these promoters, not really gamify it, but kind of create I guess you dub it A.C.E, Asynchronous Competition Event. Tell me about that. Tell me how you do a race and you're not racing against anybody.
So this is where Kyle, the IT guy, and Kyle, the race director guy, like join forces in my brain. So understanding that these companies can't have groups of people racing anymore, the virtual event's been around forever. I mean, there's a lot of different, like Nike started something way back when they had the little Nike thing, the Nike Plus, you put on your shoe. You could race everybody in the world and do a marathon and be judged. There are apps out there, like Strava is a big one, that where you can track your stuff. In fact, the joke in the racing community is if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen. So there's this whole, like the GPS, the Garmin GPS, the bike computers, all those exist for tracking your events and recording your events and sharing your events to prove to people that you actually did the 20 miles or so. So the technology already is out there. Race, like I said earlier, race promoters don't like to spend money. So IT stuff in the race promotion world is a really weird thing. It's usually the promoters that have finally figured out that they need to up their game. They do things like RFID chips, which is where you have an antenna in your bib, either on your chest or on the bike, and you run through an archway that has a bunch of sensors on it that goes ping and shows that you were there. And the next time you come around, ping, it shows it, and it gives you a lap time. The difference between the two pings. What's going on right now is you can't have a group of people together. So how do you have racers race without seeing each other? So the idea of asynchronous competition comes to mind, where no longer do you have a 9 o'clock start gun where the race starts at 9 o'clock. Instead, now you have a week-long race where people race at different times where they don't have to see each other. And in a sense, it's Bob races at 8, Susie races at 9, John races at 10. You could really stretch this out over an entire month. That's how it first kind of got started, was, okay, we just break everybody up. You have a trail run with 200 people. If you break up 200 people over a week, you could have it pretty close where no one will ever see each other. They all get to race the trail. No one ever sees each other. And if you do, your social distancing and everything, you could use RFID. You could use your cell phone. One idea was you show up to the race, you call a phone number, you say, here I am, and someone in a truck flashes their lights because that's where the race director's sitting in his truck. And you get on the phone, it's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you go. That's a very possible. It's low tech. It's everyone owns a phone.
Right.
It's very simple, right? You go run your race. When you come back, you may call a phone number again. You get a finish time, and now you're ranked against other people that you never saw. Now, I've heard people say, "Well, that's not very competitive." Oh, well, how do I race? I'm not racing. The competition is where I want it at. I argue with, well, there are a few people that show up to your races that always win. Those people did not make you any money. Sorry. Usually you have to give them the purse. Usually you have to give them prizes. In fact, they're the ones who they'll pay the 30 to $50 to be in your race, usually walk away with the $200 or $300 worth of stuff. They make money when they show up to your race. There used to be an old, like a society of racers that would travel around the country, and that's how they would make their money, purses and those kind of things. The people in the middle, the people who show up just for the fun of it, those are the people you make your money on. Those are the people who actually pay the bills. Make races for them to keep alive until you can kind of experiment and work these out to make them a little more competitive if you want to be. The fun thing is a lot of these racers who have picked up the baton on this and understand this have realized that is exactly what they can do. A place called Rootstock Racing in Pennsylvania, although they're doing their thing for charity, has figured out that if you pay $35, I give you a whole, almost like a scavenger hunt of incredibly painful things to do. 2 hours of running, 3 hours of biking. You have to go find a bridge and a hilltop and a historical monument. And then you have to go find some geocache stuff. You go to geocache.com and do the geocache thing and find a bunch of those things along the way. And then you have to take a bunch of pictures and check in. And we'll give you a t-shirt. And then we'll put you in a stack for getting prizes. So if you finish the event, you have to be in it to win it. And then if you do everything correctly, now you can get a t-shirt. Now you get a whole stack worth of stuff. And you get some weird competition categories like most interesting photos or fastest to do it all, or the person who sent in the most interesting places that they found, or the most creative ways, because some of the stages can be done any way you want to, most creative way of doing it. So they've figured out the gamification of this. What this is doing is event directors for racing will have to become, in one sense or another, membership sites. At some point, it's going to have to be a subscription service. You're going to have to subscribe to the racing company you want to go to, and they'll send you the monthly map of the course that you will run. You'll pick the time, the place you want to run it, social distancing, and go run your course and check in, do all the things it requires you to check in. And then you'll be ranked against the other people who are there. It'll be the gamification of that. And the apps and all the IT behind that will support this. GPS in the phone will become your proof that you did it. And it'll be as simple as that, is this whole new type of club sport will all move online. Although you'll do your running in real life or riding your bike out in real life, you won't see a lot of these people per se out in the trail. And the trails are a big place. These parks are huge. I've been to parks where I've never seen anybody all day long. And I know there's 50 or 60 people there. Never see a single soul. So this is very doable.
I mean, during the races themselves, even when there's a bunch of people out there, I would think that people are not on top of each other. Everybody has a different level of skill and that kind of thing. So this thing sounds like this approach sounds like a natural evolution. And also, even after we come out of this, whenever that is, this could be something that could supplement or actually become someone's actual business. You have your big giant one big race where you've got all of the logistics that you need to manage and getting all the permits and all that kind of jazz and support. But you can have numerous numbers of these things all year.
Absolutely. And you think about this too. Do I need a permit to do this? Maybe. Do I need to have a lot of logistics? Do I need to buy the trailer and all that stuff? Maybe. I mean, you think about it as a race promoter, all the cones and tape and snow fencing and archways and all that other stuff I have to buy. I don't have to buy that anymore. A race director who wants to do this kind of thing can start with minimal stuff. I mean, you could take survey tape, walk around a trail, some survey tape, and put up a cardboard sign, and that could be a course. I mean, it doesn't have to be anymore. Call this number when you start. Hello? Hey, this is Kyle. You ready to start? Ready? Okay, go. Call this number when you're done. Hey, I'm done. Okay, cool. Have a nice day. Check this website. Click, and that's it. I mean, it could be something as simple as that, as an email. And there was going to be, and I agree with you, there's going to birth a whole new level of race and event people, because this can work for a lot of things. I mean, there's going to be sports that have never had representation that will benefit from this. There's all sorts of weird sports that people haven't even heard of yet that are going to become these kind of because what's the sport of the month? Can't run every month. That might be boring. Let's mix it up. What do we call it? Let's ruck this week. You're like, well, ruck. It's like, yeah, that's where you put a 20-pound bag of sand or a metal plate in your backpack and go for a walk. What do I get from that? I give you a patch, which is the actual sport of rucking. If you go to goruck.com and go see if you do this, it's honor system. You do the exercise, you do the walking, you turn it in. It's like 12 hours of walking around with weight on your back. They'll send you a patch. They're kind of cool. There's like a new one every month. It becomes like that. Just like the way people collect marathon medals. Have you ever seen the people who do like the Disney runs or the big 50-mile trail races? Every trail race or every Disney run has a different medallion for just showing up, for finishing the race. You have to finish. But they're collector's items. There are people that collect the whole, like, there's like 50 of them. They collect all of them, like a Mickey and the Goofy and something. Do that for your races. Do that for your events. Make it interesting in that they're going for the collection and the love of the sport. And who cares who's on the podium? You can create all sorts of weird different kind of podiums. Make it interesting for people. If you make it fun, the majority of people that actually show up to your race just to have fun will show up to this too.
Yeah, I mean, you can, going along with the whole idea and supposition, you can have a virtual podium. You know what I mean? It's, you join this club, everybody does their thing, and everybody has, either a virtual gala, a virtual dinner, a virtual awards thing. You can kind of execute that as well. You had kind of touched on the fact that there's not a lot of movement to new ways to actually manage stuff. And that, I think that also plays with the idea that there's not a lot of real formal education in this. This is why you kind of jumped into it. I mean, when you go to do any kind of sports management, it's more about how to manage the football team. Like, right. There's no real formal education out there on this kind of idea?
No, it's not. And it's because these sports are very fringy. If you think about it, is a lot of ways that people get into these sports is by racing them. And that's usually how they first become race promoters, race directors in the first place. It's either they can't race anymore or there's no race out there that they want to race, so they create their own. And it starts with friends, and then they birth up from there. You'll notice that if you talk to a lot of people who do race promotion and race direction, they were either at one time a racer themselves or a good racer. There are plenty of them use name recognition. A lot of them were in the sport that were, you could consider almost like, there are a few people who are like Olympic level people. There are people who are in the collegiate sports. There are a lot of people in the coaching area that for some reason or another can't race anymore, or, they realize that they've reached the age of 40 something and the 20 somethings will crush them. So they don't like losing anymore. There are a lot of guys out there who just can't handle, coming in 10th place. So there is that. Those are usually the transition people. They like, well, I can do this. This can't be that hard. And it turns out that it's not, technically it's not hard, but it's like anything else. It's an art and you have to put a lot of work into it. And it's not something that magically makes money. I think it took me 4 years of doing racing back to back to back before I finally made my first $100. Wow. That was after paying everybody. I mean, you should be surprised how much USA Cycling judges cost. And then they want a hotel room, and then they want to be fed. And, and then you have to, then the pros show up and they want their purse money. And then you realize that you have to pay the park, and the park wants a cut too. And, so then of course the two police officers you had doing your course, well, you gotta drop some money in the Fraternal Order of Police. Otherwise you don't get them next time. So you realize at the end of the day, you've got like a stack of crumbled ones, and you're like, I guess this is profit.
Well, it becomes an event, and that, we kind of come full circle here. It's, people, a lot of people want to open a business. They do something and they say, oh, I can turn this into a business.
Yeah.
And there's difference between doing something and actually having a business that does this thing. It's a totally different skill set. So you're creating opportunity for people to develop this skill set. And you don't even need to be a racer. Like, I look at this and I go, wow, this is an opportunity for a lot of people who may be out of work or thinking about, they've got really good skill sets, like really, great planner, they're organized, but they don't have the background as a racer. But maybe they can team up with somebody who can be their consultant as a racer.
Absolutely. And the weird thing is that of all that, the pricing I listed, you didn't pay yourself. A lot of times you're the last one who gets paid. So you
Right.
work 3 hours or 3 months and then 96 hours straight to set up this race. And that's the $100 you have left over. So if you divide that up, it's like something like what, 15 cents an hour or something. It's like no money like that. So to think about if you want to go into this kind of thing, oh, there's gonna be bags of money laying around. Okay, that's not going to happen initially because you have to gain a reputation and get people to come in. So yeah, if you're an event person who's creative and you understand planning and details, and you can pair yourself up with a race person. Think about it. If you go to any rec center or any trail or anywhere out, there's people walking around and doing stuff. People want to be active. People enjoy being active. Unfortunately, because of what we're going through now, the social aspect is missing. So you just kind of create it almost artificially. Is you create the social aspect using the internet. The membership site could have a forum and it could have chats and could talk about the trails you want to do. People could recommend trails they want to do. People could recommend race. Your audience who joins this could become your best resource for figuring out where to do the next thing. One idea was we talked about walking around lakes. I mean, every place has a lake somewhere, and then you just go around it. It's not that hard.
No, and you could also do something like a triathlon. It's like go do your walk around the lake, and you can manage your target audiences. It doesn't need to be somebody who's going to do a ruck thing. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. But go walk around the lake, whatever. I mean, and maybe I'm kind of going off, the specific thing of what you're talking about, but. I'm just trying to figure out how you can apply all these great techniques to something that somebody could turn it into a different kind of a race, to have a different target audience even.
Well, it becomes the concept of how do you make appointment exercise.
Right.
I show up to a certain spot, I do an exercise, I log it to prove that I did the exercise, and then I move on to the next thing. By understanding the orchestration of that, and how the fee they pay for being a member gets them the exclusivity of being part of that orchestration becomes really the value added. Orienteering is a perfect example. Orienteering requires a map. Well, if you're not signed up, you don't get the map. So in order to get the new map, because someone went out in the woods somewhere and hit a bunch of flags, if you want to know where that is, and that could be anywhere in your locality, suddenly it's like Friday afternoon, ding, the new map comes out. And now you have the new map. And now it's like you can go in and maybe you say, okay, who's going to be on Saturday? Who's going to be Sunday? The first 20 slots get it. And you can be one of the first 20 slots that gets to go to the park on Saturday to find these flags. I mean, in a normal race, well, a lot of these races, like you said earlier, is I see everyone at the beginning and I see everyone at the end. And I don't see anybody in the middle.
Right.
I mean, we've been practicing social distancing in off-road sports or outdoor sports since they started doing this. I would say 1600s or so. I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure how far back outdoor sports, the actual sporting part of this thing. But if you think about it, orienteering was birthed from the military. Well, the military was, how do we find where we need to go? Well, that's orienteering. That's map and compass. So you realize that a lot of these sports, because of the vastness of the venue you have to work in, you're automatically making people be away from each other anyway. So yeah, you lose a little bit of the team of it, you lose a little sociability of it, but the fact that it exists now becomes something I get to do. So now rather than walk around the block Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, on Friday, I get to go over to Prince William Forest and do that course. And maybe it's one of 3 courses. Maybe I get to choose which of the courses I want to do. And now I'm in the group and I said, oh yeah, I did that course, no spoilers. And then people are talking about, oh, did you see that one? Oh, that one flag was really hard to find. And now you have a whole chat going on. You can make this interesting for people. The problem right now is a lot of these race directors have battened down the hatches. They're a little scared to release themselves into this online world to do this. They'll get there if they want to survive. And I think this is the challenge they're going to have to do is they're going to have to realize that the way they did things is now over. This is the new way. They're going to have to, they're almost like the late adopters. You ever seen that curve of the people who adopt? Yeah. The reason why they can't buy rotary flones is because they don't make them anymore. Those are those people. Race directors are those people. They're late adopters for everything, which is why they still use paper and clipboard, because they don't trust any of the technology. Well, that's going to have to change. Race directors are going to have to embrace this if they want to survive. That's Kyle's 2 cents.
How do you think that actually, though, is going to happen? I mean, I guess it's like anything. It's, like we were just talking about, there's new opportunity for newer people. I mean, I look at things like the Apple Watch. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have an Apple Watch for the longest time. A friend of mine took me out. I got one. I use it every single day right now. And I look at that as a platform for this. I mean, this sounds like the perfect platform. Like, how can, if somebody like that gets into something like this and create some kind of a technology, can that help this sport?
I think so, because it's removing the friction. How do you remove the friction for this? Somewhere, someone is going to figure out that I'm going to create a software as a service for memberships for event companies to go in and actually start this. Probably not going to take very long. There's probably already a couple companies out there that have membership sites that could just retool them and remarket them for event managers. That's why I think that's going to be part of it. I think that the GPS technology is gotten to the point now because everyone's got a phone, and inside those phones have some of the most amazing GPS tracking systems in there. Mm-hmm. All you need in some of these apps, like Strava, already exists, where I join a Strava group with all the other racers. So there's a private Strava group I get invited to. I join it. And then when I decide when I want to do the course, I do the course. And Strava does all the math for me, and then tells the whole group, how well did Kyle do? And then automatically ranks me. And so now I have proof that I did it. I've done the course as prescribed, so it shows me the GPS tracking will tell me whether or not I cheated or not. So it'll definitely, it'll rat me out. So I can't do any course cutting or anything like that. It'll tell me how fast I did it, and it will keep, because off-road sports is great, because say I had a road run and I just get in my car with my Strava, I just drive at 5 miles an hour, in my car, do the whole course, and ta-da, Kyle just did a 5K. Yep. Strava will say, Kyle did a 5K. Congratulations, Kyle. I never left my car. Can't do that on the trail. On the trail, you're going to have to do it yourself, because that's the only way to get the device out there. So this is the reason why off-road sports will definitely benefit from tools of the trade like phones and GPS tracking and applications that do GPS tracking. There's also a weird thing happening in cycling, and it's called Zwift. I think there's the Z. It's like Swift with a Z.
Yeah, that's good.
It's almost like, you ever heard of Peloton? Peloton's
yes.
You buy the $2,000 monster, and then you have to pay the service, but you get to see the screen, and you're running with a trainer, and like, go 10 more minutes, go, right? It's like a cycle. It's like a spin class that you get. Well, Zwift is kind of like that, only it pretends like you're on the course itself. And you have a little avatar, and you ride the trail, and you could do a Tour de France, or you could do all these other different races where you can race against other people in the group who are also pro athletes. In fact, a lot of like world level cyclists get together in groups. They use Discord to do their coordination. They get on Zwift, and Zwift, they get to join a special group, and then they race each other. These are like world renowned, like Jeremiah Bishop and some of these guys that are Ruggs, and these guys who are world-class athletes racing what comes down to being a video game. It's a video game. They're on their trainer. They're legitimately putting out the watts and pedaling and stuff like that. So they're legitimately racing their bike. It's just the computer is showing them virtually in a world where they're racing against their friends. And they're racing against, nobodies too. They join the group. They get a bunch of people on there they don't even know. And suddenly the guy who's the world-class athlete, who's got the gold jersey of the Tour de France, he gets beat by, nobody 513. And he's like, who the heck is that guy? Then they come to find out that, because it's a stationary bike, turns out that like triathletes do better than actual just cyclists. There's a weird translation. There's a lot of tactics in cycling that you don't get in the game. Sometimes in Zwift, there are like power-ups. So maybe you're falling behind, you can hit the power up, and now you get double speed. There's a lot of fun things you can make because it's a game.
Mhm.
But that's another way where they're not even leaving their house. They're just cycling in place and having a competition and doing that. By monetizing that level of play, you can do that with a lot of other sports too. And this is, I think, the weird thing that's happening with this. And I think it's really in its infancy, but I expect to see, I'm already starting to see more and more virtual events start to pop up. People are starting to realizing that, okay, they're doing experiments. They're testing the market. They're trying to figure out whether or not this is something they want to do. And as they do that, the other sports people who also got punched in the face will go, huh, well, I can do that too. Why does the mountain biker guy get to do that? I'm a road guy. I can do it with the road people. And this is what's going to happen, is you're going to get this kind of birth of virtualization of sports. And I called it see, there's a tongue twister. Of course, leave it to me to come up with a tongue twister. Asynchronous competition events, or ACEs. Yeah, because I like to make up words. So, but it's what it is. It's a competition where you're asynchronous, which is a computer term for things that happen, whenever they're ready to happen. Makes perfect sense. These companies can monetize this if they are thinking clearly that they need to connect online worlds with real life.
I think it's a mirror of what is actually happening with everything at this point. A lot of company events, all sorts of events, concerts, that kind of thing. Everybody's doing the virtual thing because they have to. This situation has pushed us and pressed us to actually jump into that. Some of us are doing it better than others, but I think it's actually a real opportunity for this. And the stuff that you're talking about is a piece of it that I never even considered. I mean, I've heard of this kind of mountain biking and racing and things like that, but the idea of actually doing it kind of virtually, it's not really virtual though. Like, you say virtual and you're not, it's you think it's like pretend, but you're still really like, getting a workout and competing. All of that is still a part of it, which I find extremely interesting.
I think it needs a new word. There's probably someone will come out there and coin a term that will encapsulate this, because you're right. It's not quite virtual and it's not totally competition real life. It's something in the middle. So
yeah, like a hybrid thing. But do you see ways for this kind of an idea? I'm always trying to find a way for one kind of idea to transfer into another. Like, I'm trying to figure out how are we going to get trade shows and things back up and running. I know that, now there's a lot of, when you go through a trade show, you have these RFID things and you can check in and you go through certain sets of parameters and you get rewarded in some way. I mean, I can't quite figure out, because a trade show is over, 2 or 3 days. How do you get 20, 50, 100,000 people through a place using maybe some of this, some of this equipment and ideas and creativity?
Well, I think as you think about it is, okay, so I have a racer. A racer is in the real world doing a real thing. Well, let's translate that to just somebody interested in topics. And then let's turn the Zwift, or the online racing tool, and let's turn that into Worlds of Warcraft, which is just a multi-level multiplayer game. And instead of having a fantasy world, I just create the conference in its entirety in a virtual world where I can walk around and chat with people who are close to me and whose different avatars I can see, and I can go to different rooms and see this. I've already seen this with DevOps in the IT world. A lot of the DevOps people have come up with some of these virtual conferences where there's a trade floor where you can see all the different vendors and they have their little videos there, or you can interact with them or chat with them to see whether they're different wares. Or you can go to a conference where you can pick which room you want to be in. It's not perfect. It's kind of it's clunky. But it's, if you think about it, is if you're taking any kind of real world event and you're virtualizing it, well, then you need to start thinking about what out there is working well. And if you could think of anything, and because I have adult children who play video games, Worlds of Warcraft is working well. They've got something like, so many X million of players on those servers. Well, just take the fantasy element out of it And just think about the actual engine itself that runs around the virtuality. It's a lot of people who log in, who get to move around a virtual space and encounter other people. They have chat functions. They can verbally talk to each other through VoIP, so they can actually speak to people. They can block people they don't want to talk to. You have all the different controls you have, but now you're living in a virtual world.
Yeah, you can create sponsorships. You can, create little mini events within events, that kind of thing.
It opens up, and Second Life, I think, tried to do this a little bit. I think even EverQuest kind of has this element too, this virtualization piece. But if you can do it for conferences and you can do it well and at a good price, there is a whole new level of software application that could work for events in this way by virtualizing events and trying this asynchronous thing. Think about if I can go to an actual place and do this at an actual place when I want to. Maybe my home computer can't process this fast, or maybe I don't have an internet connection, but maybe there is almost like these, what do you call these co-working spaces. But I can't co-work with a whole bunch of other people, or maybe I don't have the equipment. But I can go to a co-working space and go to a conference when it's just me sitting 6 feet away from someone else. Maybe that works. Maybe it's a connection between co-working space where I can't be part of the conference unless I go to the co-working space and I'm in almost like a minified version of the conference for my locality versus the big conference, which is actually online. There's a lot of different play elements of this. And I think the tools are all here. We've had them for years. It's just, it's never been applied to events at this level. And sure, I can Zoom. Zoom's great. Zoom doesn't really have the interaction that I'm looking for. Warcraft, however, has the interaction that would be fantastic, because then I could walk out of one conference room and walk to another. I can find my friends in there and talk to them. I can see who's logged in and who's not logged in by just, all our avatars look like us. I mean, there's a whole lot of different fun things you could do. It's almost like Ready Player One, only for conferences.
Here's the thing for me. I like the idea of that we are moving toward this. And again, the fact that this kind of whole COVID thing happened is kind of pushing everybody forward in these virtual events. I do like the idea of the touchy-feely thing, though too. I like to be with people. I think looking at people, eye to eye, even over a computer screen isn't the same for me. But I come from a place, I've done live events for over 30 years, so it's a hard push for me. But I'm opening up to it.
We think about it as the way we were raised. I mean, I was raised that you make eye contact, you shake the hand, you learn a lot simply by the way they look at you and the way their hand feels in your hand and the way they approach you in that first 20 seconds. How do you do that online? How do you have that level of intimacy, I guess is what you could call it, online? Just like, how do you compete against somebody who isn't there? A lot of people do competition because they don't get pushed by themselves. They get pushed with other people. Well, maybe it's something, okay, we could even go way further into the future. Maybe when you run that trail race, maybe you're wearing virtual goggles and maybe you see the other people running next to you that have raced before or raced after. I mean, maybe you're seeing their ghost image of where the computer knows where they are, when they were running this event, that makes you want to run it even faster or slower. Maybe there's a way of doing something like that. Or something even crazier is you find similar courses in different parts of the country and everyone races at different times, but all or at the same time, but all with, they see a virtual version of the other racer, and that kind of gives them the leg up. It's difficult with trails because trails are metrical, right? So you can't really, turns here, turns there to match that exactly. But you could do that on a track. You could do that on a road. You could find similar features where you could do that. I mean, in infancy, it could be kind of interesting. You could probably do some kind of crazy stuff like that where, because we're locked in and we're thinking these things, now people are going, well, I never really took a look at the virtual technology. Maybe I'm going to look at it again. Has it ever been applied that way? Maybe not. Maybe that's just the little spark of creativity. Someone needs to go, oh, well, I thought about that a while ago. I didn't think it would like that. Maybe they'll like it now.
Maybe they will like it now. Yeah. And I could talk to you about this all day. And but I'll have to have you back on because I want to say thanks to you, and thanks for being so creative and kind of giving me a nudge because it's really, really insightful, the stuff that you're talking about. Like I say, I want to talk to you more about it, so I'll have to give you a call. How can people reach you and get in touch with you, Kyle, if they want to talk to you about some of this stuff?
So we're at gagglepod.com, and you can find us at gagglepod@gmail.com if you want to reach out and talk about these things. If you're interested in the racing side of it, Merchants of Dirt is at merchantsofdirt.com or reckoneer.com, which is basically like recreational engineering is really what, again, see, made up a new word. So it's my word. You can't.
I see now.
The beauty of Reckoneer is no one had it. Yeah.
Perfect. You hit the jackpot with that.
Yeah. Well, create those words. So reckoneer.com is where you can find, if you want to find another racing stuff, go to reckoneer.com. That's the center for that. And all my podcasting stuff is all gagglepod.com. Those are my two home away from homes right now.
Well, I'll put all that stuff in the show notes so that people can be sure to reach out to you. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show and being so open and exciting. This is an exciting topic.
I love it. I can talk about this stuff all day long. This is really, it's the kind of thing where it's so, you can create anything you want. And when you realize that you have that ability, then it just opens up so many doors. So yeah, totally love this stuff.
Awesome. Thanks again, Kyle.
Sure. Take care.
Well, that's a wrap for this show. Hey, you can show us some love by subscribing to the show wherever you're listening to us. Subscribing is caring. You can also find us at eventyak.com. The opinions expressed on Event Yak are the opinions of our individual guests and not necessarily the organizations to which they're affiliated. Event Yak is a production of Moonfish Production Limited. Thank you for listening. Be kind, be safe, and stand by to stand by.